Daniel Okoro was a man of quiet dignity, the kind of person whose strength was measured not in words, but in deeds. At 32, he had built a modest but successful cement store in Lagos. Life had been simple, yet good, until Grace Nwosu came into it. Grace was ambitious, elegant, and sharp-minded. From the moment they met, Daniel saw in her a brilliance he admired, and a fire that called to his own sense of purpose. He didn't just love her beauty, he believed in her potential. "Grace, you deserve to be more than this," he said one rainy afternoon, clutching the paperwork for her law school application. "I can help you go to school. You'll be a lawyer, and one day, you'll help so many people." Grace's eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and pride. "Daniel, are you sure? You've worked so hard for this store, your inheritance." "I've saved enough," Daniel replied with a calm smile. "I want to see you rise. I'll manage." That day, Daniel signed over the money from his late father's inheritance to cover her tuition, housing, and living expenses for the next 4 years. It was a gamble, but he believed in love, in partnership. The years that followed were filled with sacrifices. Daniel worked tirelessly, keeping the store afloat, managing every detail, ensuring Grace never had to worry about anything except her studies. He watched her graduate with honors, beaming with pride. "Look at her," he whispered to himself the night of her graduation. "All this, it's worth it." But something had begun to shift. Grace's gratitude was genuine but fleeting. With every success, her ambition grew sharper, her demeanor more assertive. Daniel noticed the subtle changes, the impatience in her voice, the little dismissals that were once excuses for stress. Yet, he told himself, "She's under pressure. It's temporary. She'll change." Then, tragedy struck. A fire engulfed his cement store. In moments, Daniel lost everything: the business, his savings, his source of pride and independence. Yet, he remained steadfast in his commitment to Grace. She now had a law degree, a promising future, and he had nothing. But Daniel never complained. Instead, he quietly adapted, taking care of the house, the children, and their modest lifestyle. He cooked meals, bathed the children, and even carried groceries on his back while Grace went about her day. Neighbors in their compound noticed the change, whispering among themselves. "Look at him," one tenant murmured. "He's doing everything, and she hardly acknowledges him." Daniel would overhear but always smiled politely. "She's under a lot of pressure. She's a good woman. She'll come around," he would say, defending Grace, even when his own pride quietly ached. That night, as he prepared dinner while his 2 children played at his feet, Daniel reflected on his life. "I've lost a business, but I haven't lost my dignity. I may not have wealth, but I have patience and love. Maybe that's enough." Little did Daniel know, this was only the beginning. The sacrifices he made, the respect he upheld, and the humility he carried would soon lead him to a choice that would define his life forever. Life took a hard turn for Daniel Okoro after the fire that destroyed his cement store. Overnight, he went from a proud business owner to a man struggling to make ends meet. But Daniel, ever patient and loving, never let despair take over. He focused on the one thing he could still control: his family. Grace Nwosu, now a full-fledged lawyer, walked into the house every morning with her sharp heels clicking against the tiled floor, papers in hand, and a mind full of cases and ambitions. Daniel, once her partner in both life and business, had now become the silent backbone of their home. He woke before dawn each day. He bathed their 2 children, dressed them neatly, and prepared their breakfast. While Grace prepared for work, he carried the youngest child on his back to fetch water from the well, balancing household chores and errands. One morning, as he balanced a basket of groceries on his head while the baby clung to his back, a neighbor called out, "Daniel, are you carrying all that again? Grace should be helping too." Daniel smiled politely. "She has work. I'll manage." Inside the house, the tension was palpable. Grace rarely acknowledged his efforts. If the food wasn't ready on time, she would shout, "Daniel, why is the rice still not cooked? Can you not get anything right?" Some nights, when disagreements escalated, Daniel found himself sleeping on the couch outside the main bedroom, while Grace claimed the space as her right, without regard for his dignity. Even when Grace's friends visited, Daniel was the one serving drinks, arranging chairs, and running errands, all while maintaining a calm smile. He never complained, even when whispers from their tenants revealed their sympathy for him. One afternoon, as Daniel scrubbed a mountain of dishes in the middle of the compound yard, he muttered quietly to himself, "This is not what I imagined, but I'll do it for the children. I'll do it for Grace. Maybe one day, she'll see." The children, oblivious to the weight on their father's shoulders, laughed and played around him. Daniel felt a pang of sorrow. "I'm doing this for them, but who is doing this for me?" At this point, Daniel began to notice something disturbing. Grace no longer looked at him with affection or appreciation. He was invisible in the house, a servant rather than a partner. The neighbors began to murmur more boldly, seeing the imbalance. "See how she treats him, it's too much," one tenant whispered. Daniel, overhearing but always dignified, would reply with a gentle smile, "She's under a lot of pressure. She's a good woman. She'll come around." Despite the humiliation, he kept hope alive, believing that one day, Grace would remember the sacrifices he made for her and the family. But deep inside, a seed of doubt had been planted. How long could he endure being invisible in the very home he built with his love and sweat? Little did Daniel know, the answer, and a new path, would come from the most unexpected place, a kind-hearted teacher who noticed his struggles and began a journey that would change everything. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel Okoro's life at home became a relentless cycle of work, service, and humiliation. Every day began before the sun rose and ended long after it had set. He bathed the children, cooked meals, carried water, washed dishes, and ran errands, all while Grace Nosu continued to live as if he were invisible. One morning, after he had carried the youngest child on his back to the market and returned with a basket full of groceries, Grace glanced at him and snapped, "Daniel, I told you to boil the yam before I got home. How hard is it to follow simple instructions?" Her words cut deeper than any physical pain. Daniel's hands trembled slightly, but he forced a calm voice. "I'm sorry, Grace. I'll fix it immediately," he said, quietly setting the basket down. Later that evening, as he scrubbed the mountain of cooking utensils in the compound yard, a neighbor whispered, shaking her head, "Poor man, he's doing everything, and she doesn't even care." Daniel heard, but he only smiled politely. "She's under stress. She'll come around." Even the children noticed the tension. One afternoon, while Daniel was bathing his youngest child, the eldest, Chinidu, tugged at his sleeve and asked quietly, "Daddy, why do you always do everything? Why doesn't Mommy help?" Daniel forced a smile, brushing the boy's hair gently. "Because, my son, sometimes adults are busy. We must help each other, even when it's hard. One day, she will understand." But deep inside, Daniel felt the weight of humiliation pressing on his heart. Grace's friends came over often, and he was the one fetching drinks, arranging chairs, serving food, and smiling as if it were nothing. The breaking point came one evening when Grace returned home late, exhausted from a long day at the office. Daniel had been cooking, tending to the children, and cleaning the house all day. "Why is the living room still not spotless?" Grace barked. "Why is the floor not mopped? Daniel, I can't take this anymore." Daniel, who had been silently enduring everything, finally felt the sting of his pride and patience. He looked at her calmly, yet with a quiet sadness that carried the weight of all the years of sacrifice. "Grace, I have done everything I could to support you, our children, and this home. I have never asked for anything in return except respect," he said, his voice steady but firm. Grace scoffed and walked past him, shutting the door to their bedroom. That night, Daniel slept outside on the veranda, unaware that his quiet endurance was nearing its breaking point. What came next would shake the foundation of his marriage and his life. To be continued. Part 2 coming soon.